Hello, you beautiful, beautiful people. We're back
Hello,
here. Um, if you're new here, I'm Viv.
I'm Olivia. We are Viv and Liv.
Officially now, which is wild. um, and yeah, welcome back to following our journey to our major project, also known as our master's dissertation. So, yeah, Olivia, would you like to give us the condensed version of what we're talking about today?
Oh, yes. So today we are going to be talking about kind of the main part of our project here, what's at the heart of everything we're doing, which are these interviews that we're conducting. Um, so I guess to back it up a little bit, this project is a piece of practice as research, which is like using theater and performance as a way of either or conducting research and presenting research results. So for us, it's both. We are using interviews as a primary source of research and also using our actual performance as a method of demonstrating the research and the results of the research that we've done. So the research question that we're starting with is just how do female identifying, female presenting, femme passing, and female socialized people even experience male gaze, and that can be externalized or internalized male gaze, but it's a very open-ended question purposefully. It's just how do people experience straight male gaze? So anyone who might be the subject of straight male gaze, regardless of your gender orientation, it's just anyone who might have had to experience that before and can talk on it. So all of those people are who we're interviewing, just trying to get their take, and these are just just various people in our lives. Some are performers and some are not. Some come from a theatrical background like we do, but I think many of them, or most of them actually even, are just regular old members of society that we happen to know. So we're getting a pretty broad perspective on how people experience straight male gaze. Um, and so now, Viv, if you'd like to get into, so that was kind of what our research question is and the purpose of these interviews. And now I'll let Viv take it away and discuss a bit of how those interviews actually incorporate into our final performance piece that we'll be putting on in, oh God, just a couple weeks now.
Oh God, yeah, is that literally going to be like it's going to be 2.5 weeks. That's wild. Let's not think
Yeah.
about that yet. But yes, the reason why this particular section of the podcast is coming up so late, if you will, is literally because we finished the interviewing process. I finished it on Friday. Olivia, when did you finish
Me
it?
too, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
something
so
about
this is
that.
literally very, very fresh news that we are finally able to share about it this openly, because obviously the interviewees were informed about the general thematics of the interview without getting the um, specific questions beforehand, so they were kind of flying in blind, but not
Mhm.
necessarily. They were told about the structure of the interview, which we will talk about in a very, very hot second. But kind of like there was the informed consent still very much present, and the idea of a safe space that we create, and constantly checking in if the interviewees are feeling comfortable with sharing the things, and constantly reminding them that they do not have to address anything that they feel uncomfortable sharing with, and they feel uncomfortable potentially put into a performance space. So kind of like it was constantly relying on their comfortability on the subject. So now, they were informed that there were three sections of the interview. First section of 5 questions that they will be answering blind. Second section of 5 questions that they will be first informed of fully and then collaborated on with us, and then filmed individually, each 5 questions. And a final section of 2 questions. First one, they will be answering blind to the camera, and second one, then obviously collaborated and then answered to the camera, informed of the question
Yes,
beforehand.
and
Oh, that was a mouthful.
I know. And what we got out of those interviews, we'll get back into more details on the structure later, so we can actually get into not exactly the specific questions, but just go section by section to say what we were doing throughout the interview. But I think first, just to because the interview process was so complicated and the sets of questions are a bit complicated. I think we'll start by saying the purpose that the interviews and the interview questions and the footage that we got from the interviews serve in our project. So the footage that we have gathered from all of these interviews, from which are a fantastic like primary source of research, um, is being edited into a compilation of interview footage, which will actually be shown during our live performance in September. Now, the funny bit here, I think we've gotten a bit into it in the past, but I think to talk a bit more about less of where we are in our project right now, we're finally far enough along where we can, give more updates as to what it's really going to look like, what it's going to be about. So we can finally start to talk a bit more about the sports thematics of it, which we've talked about a bit in the past, but based off of a previous piece that we did called Home Run Cafe, which was inspired by a Hooters sports bar. This piece is also inspired by or takes place in it's a fake one, not a real one, but an American style sports bar restaurant, which we've called Benched Sports Bar. And
I love that name. I'm sorry.
it's
Carry
so
on.
good. And maybe I'll have Viv insert a little here, our little logo
Oh,
that we came up
absolutely.
with
The
for
logo will
marketing.
be
So
right
cute.
now here.
Here, wait. I'll give the background music for it. Oh, oh, so
Yes.
in Benched Sports Bar, just like in other typical American style sports bars, I'll explain a bit for all of our internationals out there. It's a very common, pretty much any sports bar you walk into, you're going to have like walls just covered in TV screens playing different sports games, interviews with athletes. And that's what's going on in Benched Sports Bar as well. Very professional, very official. So we'll also be having our own TV screens that are going to be playing footage just like that of spotlight interviews with athletes. So from
Specifically the network of international sports sports entertainment. So hold on. Network of international sports entertainment. So it's nice.
nice. I was really waiting to get to the punchline there. I was ready.
I'm sorry. We're just having way too much fun with the puns. Like way
I
too
know,
much fun.
But yeah, so in our world, in the world of our show, the network of international sports entertainment, nice,
Nice.
has put together an exclusive interview, sort of documentary style interview footage with all of your favorite celebrity athletes talking about their experience in the spotlight and beyond being an athlete, what it's like to be a celebrity athlete, what it's like to deal with the spotlight, media attention, fans, interviews, all of this sort of stuff. So, oh my God, Olivia and Viv, that's crazy. How did you interview so many celebrity athletes? Whoa.
Oh,
Okay,
we didn't.
we didn't.
Spoiler.
So
Spoiler alert, no actual
I'll
celebrity
let Viv
athletes
get
were
into that one.
interviewed.
Would you like to describe to carry on from here, Viv?
Yes. So if if it wasn't clear yet, we're not trying to portray men with the idea of sports terminology specifically. We're trying to create a masculine environment to juxtaposition the patriarchy that we're in. So that is the thing. It's not about the gender man, it's about the patriarchy that is controlled by male presenting people in power. So with that being inserted there, the celebrity athletes, if you will, are the people that we interviewed, are literally just people in our lives that happen to be performers or not performers or all walks of life, which is something that we're very, very privileged to have. Also, something that we also embraced from the very, very get-go of this project was the fact that we are both international and this project was bound to be international. So we are actually very, very privileged to say that we have participants from several different countries, and I believe that from 4 different continents, if I'm not.
We've got Finland, the US, Mexico, Brazil, India, UK, of course.
Yes. That is at least 6 countries represented. We will obviously go through the participants. France was one as well.
Oh, yep,
So,
great.
7 countries so far. But yes, without going more into detail with that one, um, we created this juxtaposition of being a female presenting person, female socialized person, female identifying person in the modern day society of post feminism, whether that's a thing or not, and having to deal with the patriarchal male gaze, whether it's external or internal, and then being created the juxtaposition of a professional athlete and the celebrity status of constantly being in the spotlight. So
Mhm.
that's literally the two sides of the same coin. And we created a set of interviewing questions for these participants that are reflective of each other in these two thematics and two different worlds that are actually very, very close to each other.
Yeah, and I suppose to get into that, a bit more about how we actually accomplished that. If we were to get into the structure
Yes,
already of the way that
definitely.
the interviews worked. So our first set of questions, the interviewees were informed in advance that they were going to be answering questions dealing with their personal experience with male gaze, internalized or externalized. So that's what they knew going into it. And that's what the first questions are based on. It's just different questions that are getting at how do you experience male gaze? How are you taught about experiencing male gaze in your life? Were you surprised by the experiences you had? Were you prepared? Were you not? All sorts of things like that. And then using the answers from those five questions, we took all of the information that these people gave us in their interviews based on the personal things that they said and all of the unique things that they had to say. And we used all of that information to create translated versions of their answers to the questions. So we took everything that they already said, dealing with their own personal experiences with male gaze, and then translated those answers into sports terminology. And this is where we get into how we also use this project to play with a bit of what is the role of a performer, who's a performer and who isn't, what is a performer, by taking regular people and turning them into performers per se in this project, where we use the information, their personal information that they gave us, their answers to the questions, and use that to create a sort of athlete persona for each of them. Which they would then use to deliver the translated answers to the questions in section 2 and then the second half of section 3. Um, and some people decided to even have a little bit more fun with that and decide that they were a certain kind of athlete. Like some people said they were softball or synchronized swimming or rugby, whatever it was. For the most part, actually, not even for the most part, for all of it, I would say everybody that I interviewed, at least, and Viv, I'm sure you can add on to this. Every single person that I interviewed said that the interview was really fun. Everybody liked the bit of role playing, and they didn't know they were going to be doing that in advance. They were informed that they were going to be answering a thematic set of questions, which what we meant by that, without giving them too much information, to basically, I guess, back it up a little bit. We wanted to avoid giving too much information about the specific questions and what we would be doing in advance of the interview, just to avoid biasing answers. We wanted to make sure that there were no expectations that were set, that the interviewees didn't feel like they had to say anything to appease like our point of view in the interviews. That was absolutely not the purpose. It was just making sure that we heard their honest experience of what they had to say. So they didn't know they were going to be role playing per se in advance, but they all ended up really enjoying it, and everybody had a blast. I don't know if you had that same experience, Viv.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like there's kind of like with my experience, it was kind of like people were just once they were first introduced to the idea, the first two questions they were kind of like trying out how it works, and then they like start like run with it completely, and we're just kind of like, okay, I know how this works now, and I'm just gonna have fun with it, and just kind of like once they eased into the idea of kind of like what way they were doing, they were just like having so much fun. And it was also, this is something that I also realized not too long ago, is that this particular methodology that we're using here is utilizing both of our personal practices as well. So
Yep.
Olivia's background is also in psychology as well as in Meissner, and I do I call it trans scientific work, but specifically it's just science informed performance. And I use different methodologies to kind of like execute what I'm doing. And this is straight up my alley. So we were just having a ton of fun, just collaborating in this way as well, just kind of coming up with something that keeps both of us very much like interested, entertaining, and up our toes constantly.
Mhm.
And oh, I was thinking. So the final bit of the section was to talk about a specific story or experience that you've
Mhm.
experienced or memory that you've had in your daily life about first about the male gaze, and the second was obviously the translated question of the spotlight. So that was kind of
Yeah.
like an interesting thing where that was just giving free range to the people to share whatever they wanted without actually having any sort of kind of like um what do you call it? It's like
So
framing
I think,
factor.
yeah, exactly. So the way that I described the process of answering these questions to all the participants that I interviewed was just saying that these are very open-ended questions. They're free response questions. So um, there's no expectation for the content of your answer, the length of your answer. I said to everybody, your answer to any given question can be one word, a paragraph, a
Yes.
page, a monologue. Like it's whatever you have to say to answer the question. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's what you're getting at, Viv, is just that like they're very open-ended just to make sure that because we're getting a bunch of different unique perspectives from all of the different people answering these questions. So we wanted to make sure there was enough room for people to be able to answer the questions how it would best fit for them and for their
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and with that final question, which Viv is talking about, so the first version of that is just, does any particular story come to mind in which you experienced a disadvantage of male gaze? And then the translated version of that, or the sports star version of that is, while we're paralleling male gaze with the experience of being in the spotlight, just two different kinds of attention. The translated version of that question was just almost the same exact thing, but just uh, for translated to this version is, does any particular story come to mind when you experienced a disadvantage of being in the spotlight? And I think this would actually be a great opportunity to talk about a bit what that translation process looks like. So I could talk a bit about something that happened in one of my interviews and something that someone said, how we worked to translate it for that final question, experiencing a disadvantage of male gaze. I will say for whoever's watching this, just a quick trigger warning now, which is, the same thing that comes up it's just the content that comes up in all these interviews in our project. I'm just going to be talking about what someone said about her experience with male gaze or catcalling, harassment sort of themes, or what came up in this answer in particular, um, which, unfortunately are very, very common themes from the answers that we got. We'll dissect that later. But for that final question, when I asked, can you, does any story come to mind of when you experienced the disadvantage of male gaze? I believe this person, just like a lot of the people that I interviewed, started with, well, so many, and then went on to describe an experience of right after she moved to New York City. She was standing on a subway platform and a man came up to her and she said, she tried to look, unapproachable by having her earbuds in. So it looked like, she was unavailable. She didn't want to be talked to, but still, a man came up to her, felt entitled to her space and her time and wouldn't leave her alone, was trying to hug her. And I know, big ick. um, and we'll dissect this later. But just for the purposes of talking about how the translation process works here between um, male gaze to like spotlight experience as a celebrity athlete, the way that we work to translate an answer like that, by keeping it as close as possible to the original answer, just to make sure that it still feels like their story, still feels like their experience. It's just being expressed in a different way. This person's alter ego, sports alter ego, was a star hockey player. So in this version, she said she'd just been drafted for the New York Rangers. And she just moved to New York City. She was standing on a subway platform. She was trying not to be recognized, so she had her sunglasses and her hoodie on, but a fan still recognized her and came up to her and was, not leaving her alone, was trying to hug her. It was pretty much the same exact thing that she said, just keeping it as close as possible, even carrying some of those specific details over. like just moving to New York City, trying to look unapproachable, and the specific kind of attention that she got. We're taking all those things and just saying them a slightly different way to fit it into this theme. Um, so we can take the answers that people gave and all of their specific unique experiences and just find another way to say it that fits in this, masculine, very patriarchal setting that we've created. So that's just one example of so many of how we work to translate the things that people gave us. um, I think we're gonna have to wrap up in the next minute or so, but is there anything, Viv, that you'd like to add on to this?
Um, I feel
I
like
said it all. I get it. I'm a pro.
I mean, you are. I mean, you are. She's a star. She's a pro. So I feel like the especially now that all the interviews are done and
Hmm.
dusted in the way that just to disclose this, so we ended up having the total of 26 interviewees. Thank you so much
Yes.
for anyone who actually took part in this.
Yeah.
And we estimated 15 to 25. So
Hmm.
that was actually quite a good estimate at the end of the day, because we
Blown
just
away
put
by the response.
one over, which is
I
not something
know.
that actually happens.
No,
Rachel
we're
was
so
mentioned.
grateful. It's so cool.
Yeah, Rachel was mentioning
Mhm.
when we talked about this in one of our tutorials. She said that usually it's hard to get interviewees, and we ended up getting such a positive response to
Yeah.
our kind of like just to say just the fact that we just put it out there for people that please participate. We're talking about the male gaze, so it's just kind of like very humbling to have this sort of experience. And unfortunately, we're now wrapped up. So there were a few
Mhm.
interviewees that were still interested, but hopefully there
For
will
the
be,
next one.
yes, there will be, hopefully there will be a similar project coming in the horizon, and we will be able to interview even more people, maybe about similar thematics, maybe about something else.
Hmm.
But yes, so I feel like in the aftermath of the interviews, there's this kind of like this humbling experience of being able again to provide a platform for people who feel like they haven't been heard, which I feel like is in the heart of this actual piece, considering the interviews are treated as a score,
Hmm.
considering pretty much all the material is derived from the interviews. The fact that all of this is enabling the eventual piece in the space as well. And it's kind of like overall the fact that we got to experience these safe spaces with these people who provided their experiences with us is such a overall very much a again humbling experience, but also something that I feel very privileged to be a part
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And with that, that
of.
concludes this edition of the Viv and Liv podcast show. Um, we've been your hosts for the night, Viv and Liv.
Yes. Oh, by the way, I know that we talked about social media for like on such many occasions, but I feel like as our project has evolved, the kind of like the importance of social media has kind of like shifted a bit.
Yeah.
However, something that will appear, not maybe not in this one, but in the next one, we will link down below the Eventbrite if you do want to see us live, and if you do want to see the fact that we will have these interviews in the space, and you get to experience Bench like firsthand in person. We will be there as well,
Mhm.
obviously. So just to keep you in that loop, keep your eyes peeled on the description box. We will have the Eventbrite linked there. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say to wrap up.
Fantastic point. With that, we bid you adieu. Thank
Thank you
you
so
for
much.
joining us.
Bye.
Bye.